Hello, it is your girl Ari, also known as Nadia Sabe, and we are back for another episode of the Run It Back podcast, a music industry news podcast where we talk to you all about what you need to know as an independent musician or professional about what's going on in the industry. Starting out strongly right off the bat, we're going to talk about some drama, which every once in a while I like to put in here because I think it's funny, it's interesting. Of course, SEO buzzwords and things of that nature. It also helps with that. But we're going to talk about Bhad Bhabie and Alabama Barker. It's going to be pretty swift because I'm not sure what the lesson in all of this is, right? We have these two girls who are fighting. It has become a rap beef because specifically one of them fucked the other one's baby daddy. And the one whose baby daddy got fucked made a big stink about it online, and it became an internet beef and then turned into a rap beef. So Bhad Bhabie, if you don't know, is the Catch Me Outside girl she came out years ago just being a crash out, and went along with her career, ended up releasing an OnlyFans as soon as she turned 18, became a millionaire, made a bunch of songs before she was even making music, was like in one of Kodak Black's music videos. Basically, she's been around for a long time. She's really made a name for herself based off of who she is and her personality. You know what I'm saying? Alabama Barker, the person who she's feuding with, the girl who fucked her baby daddy, is Travis Barker, the drummer of Blink-182's drummer's daughter. Okay, so this gives you a general understanding of like the types of people, I guess, that these two are. Alabama Barker used to make like indie music when she was like 13 because her father had the resources to allow her to do her so, you know what I'm saying? And now she is a female rapper. And so these two started arguing, started beefing. My initial question within all of this that I still have not been able to find the answer to is, how did these two meet? How did these two get into the same circles with each other? It has to just be, California influencer celebrity circles, you know what I'm saying? But how did they become friends? Because at some point they were friends, to the point where in a live it was disclosed that Bhad Bhabie was like calling Alabama Barker from rehab to have conversations with her. And you don't do that unless you know, in my experience or understanding, you don't really call people from rehab unless you like know them really well, you know what I'm saying? So it's pretty interesting to me how these two actually became friends, and then, everything clearly fell apart because Alabama Barker got too close to her baby daddy, so on and so forth. But now they are actually using it, as momentum for both of their careers and launching diss tracks back at each other. It started with Bhad Bhabie. She had one diss. It was called Overcooked. That song was overcooked. It wasn't very good, I have to say. But it stirred up a lot of conversation online because she was just saying she bleeped the names out, but she was saying outrageous stuff in that song. And then Alabama Barker came out with Crybaby, which is a good song. I actually over at TMC, we did a live stream where we talked about that with some other people and how we were feeling about that song. And the homies weren't really liking it, I'm not gonna lie. Actually, I'm totally lying. With Alabama Barker's song, everyone was on Alabama's side. I was the only one who was like there for Bhad Bhabie, like championing her. Everyone really liked the song, and it is a good song. Basically the whole time within that conversation I was talking about how Dud's a good song because she didn't write it and she has a bunch of resources to make it. Like her dad is who her father is, you know what I'm saying? So of course it's a good song. I'm not surprised that it's a good song. I just personally liked Bhad Bhabie's more because I felt it was more authentic. Then we had Miss Whitman came out, or either Miss Whitman or Miss Whiteman, I can't remember how it's supposed to be said. But that came out, went crazy with the freaking Vulture sample that got cleared by Kanye. That was the whole thing because he had an AI verse that like popped up on the internet that people were talking about with that situation, and it made it even bigger than it was before. And then now Bhad Bhabie has released another diss track. This is her third diss track, and it's called OG Crash Out. And it makes sense because she is the OG Crash Out. And she has a couple of things to say in this. It's a lot of a continuation of the sentiments that has been in her other songs. But I think this is just really interesting. And I personally think, like I said, I believe that Bhad Bhabie within all of this has dropped more authentic music that I personally like more. The internet is definitely on her side. And I just don't like Alabama Barker. So, like, a reason for me to see her down, and this sounds bad because, you know, I'm supposed to be for women and all of that kind of stuff and, like, hoorah, hoorah. But at the same time, not all women deserve to be put on a pedestal. And this bitch, this Nepo baby, it just has no reason for me to, like defend her, give her any type of, like, love. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm honestly happy to see the world kind of laughing at her and looking at her and saying, hey, girl, like, you're young, you need to change your ways because this is not even who you are. Because that's really what I see. When I look at Alabama Barker, I see someone who does not know who she is and is trying really hard to find out who that person is and is getting into drama in situations that, you know, are putting her in a worse off position as she is trying to find those things, because that is something that, you know, is a deeply ingrained thing of wanting to find yourself, and we do some things to go through that process, you know what I'm saying? She happens to be super uber duper famous, so she has everybody watching her go through that, and she is going to be used as an example, and for that reason, you know what I'm saying? But why did I talk about this? Like I said, it's buzzy. It's something to talk about. There's not really much you can learn from it other than not everybody's your fucking friend, clearly, you know what I'm saying? Some women, some of your friends will fuck your baby daddy or your baby mama. I don't know. But you gotta keep an eye out for that shit, you know what I'm saying? I guess that's the lesson in all of this. And if somebody pisses you off, write a rap beef because you might be the most talked about person, you know, on the internet for a little bit because of it. Who knows? The next thing that we're going to talk about real quickly is the charts. And the main reason that I wanted to talk about the charts today is because I just think it's funny how much Kendrick is winning. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no reason. First of all, this is great. 15 weeks on the chart. Weeks at number 1, 3. You know what I'm saying? Then we have this fucking song with Lady Gaga and Bruno. Bruno Mars is Never Gonna Go Away. It is a great song. It's a great song. But it is like the pop ballad of 2025. 2024 and 2025. 2024 and 2025. Jesus. And we're not going to stop hearing it. It's been on the charts for almost 30 weeks, 29 weeks. Peak position, obviously, at 1. And it's been chilling at 2 now for a little bit. And then we have Not Like Us. And this is what I thought was just really interesting to me. This shit has been on the charts for 43 weeks. I have a feeling it's going to hit 50. Maybe even more than that. But once again, like, and then we have another Kendrick song right under that with TV Off, because of course that's a great song with Mustard, like that shit. A lot of those songs had viral moments on TikTok, which is great. And then we just have a lot of the same shit that we actually were talking about in the last episode, but we do have a new release because we have a new release from something that came out since the last episode, which was Some Sexy Songs for You from Drake and Party Next Door. Very mid project, I will say. Nokia is one of the good songs, and it's on the charts for spot number 10, you know what I'm saying, which is its peak position, and it's been there for the past 3 weeks. So that's cool. Good for Drake. But like when I scroll up and you look at this, I feel like there's an understanding of what has happened here. You know what I'm saying? And that's the main reason I wanted to show you guys that. The next thing that we're going to look at, we're going to spend a little bit of time on because it is pretty important. This is the Loud and Clear report from Spotify. There's a couple of things. I'm going to brush through the whole thing quickly, you know what I'm saying? Go through each bullet point, and then I'm going to talk about, sorry. We're going to brush through the whole thing, and I'm going to give you a couple of different tidbits. So obviously this year they've paid out more money than they've ever paid out, and that always happens every year. Every year it's like, Spotify's paid more than it ever has before, and it makes sense because more music is coming out, there's more listeners on the platform. Every year Spotify has been getting closer and closer and closer to the cap of the amount of people who can be on the platform. So every year it's obviously going to get bigger, and this year is no different, with a record $10 billion in royalty payouts, okay? Bringing the total payout in terms of how much money Spotify has given to the music industry, we'll break down what that means, to $60 billion, right? So what do I mean when Spotify says that they're giving this money to the music industry? This means anyone from independent musicians, publishers, and labels. Those are really the biggest benefactors of these royalties. And whether they're going through another system to get to either the publisher or the label or the independent musician, depending on who owns the masters. Either way, those are the two main benefactors. So that was the first thing that they want us to talk about. The second thing that they want to talk about is streaming's rising tide. Once again, back to what I said before, year after year after year, Spotify, as well as other DSPs, streaming services, are slowly reaching the cap of how many people are going to be able to use their services, because at some point you're going to have everybody on the platform. You see what I'm saying? So from their inception over the past 10 years, we've had this huge increase. They're saying we've had not only payouts, but just the market of streaming has grown exponentially in these past 10 years, which once again makes sense because we haven't hit the threshold of how large the industry of streaming can actually get, right? We're still getting there. The next thing that they want us to talk about is the paradox of the modern music industry. So one of the things that it's talking about here is the fact that there's a lot more artists who are making more money with music and via Spotify's royalty payouts. But because there is such a large amount of people uploading music every day in a grand scale, those amount of people don't necessarily look like such a big number because it's in comparison to this huge number. Which is, I feel like this is one of the ways that we get into a cop-out, because one of the stories that we talked about a couple of weeks ago was an expose piece on Spotify about where their money is going and how they've been complicit in a bunch of different schemes, right, to make sure that money isn't necessarily going into musicians' pockets, but is going into these labels' pockets and publishing houses' pockets, essentially these corporations' pockets, as opposed to actually songwriters. And this loud and clear report there's definitely a lot of things in here that are put in here to try and curb the fact that people are upset, right? So they're trying to give you things of saying oh, there's so many artists that are thriving right now. It just doesn't look like it because they're not, that number of artists that are thriving is so small compared to the amount of people who are putting music out. Which I understand their, what they're trying to do with this, you know what I'm saying? What they're trying to get across with this message. But to be honest with you, rather, it makes me feel like it further shows us the problem, because it's once again going to a point of there's this small group of people who are getting all of the resources and money and etc. compared to the entire class of workers, of musicians, who everyone deserves to live and be to earn a living wage and to be able to work and live and do their thing that they want to do. You know what I'm saying? Moving forward. One of the other things I want you to know, the 100,000th artist, thousands in royalties. So they're saying that the 100,000th ranked artist on Spotify will generate almost $6,000 in Spotify royalties in 1 year. Now, this is supposed to be meant to say to you, we're doing good. One of the smallest brackets, the smallest percentiles of our artists are still making almost $6,000 a year. You cannot live on $6,000 a year. A lot of people need $6,000 a month to get by. So yes, musicians are supposed to have let me not say supposed to have, but musicians commonly have a lot of different streams of income, and royalties aren't the only way that they get paid. But $6,000 a year is not enough to live on, once again. So this being a flex for Spotify, it seems out of touch, right? And I think that especially when we take into account that, once again, 100,000 is a big number, but we know that that amount of music is released to Spotify like every day, from different artists, you know what I'm saying? So that gives you perspective of how many musicians, once again, are actually on the platform. So then, yes, using these numbers is a little like tricky with the brain, you know what I'm saying? With the brain. So the next thing that we're going to talk about, this is the one that caught my eye, and I was like, this is the specific page that y'all are really trying to hammer this point home, that you're paying people, you know what I'm saying? Another record year for songwriters. Spotify paid out nearly $4.5 billion to rights holders who represent songwriters over the past 2 years. Why is this an issue? Because just because you paid a publisher doesn't mean that the end result is going to the songwriter. So them saying publishing rights holders who represent songwriters, in theory, makes sense and is an understandable like claim to make. But it, to me, it's just shady, and it's a way to like skirt past the fact that, once again, not everyone who has publishing or is a songwriter owns all or the majority of the publishing on their work. Sometimes publishing goes to like random people on the team, like a point to your lawyer, you know what I'm saying? And I'm saying this to give you the point of, just because it's a publishing rights holder, that does not equal songwriters. So them kind of trying to conflate the two is a little bit disingenuous, because they're trying to say that they paid pretty much half of those $10 billion, $4.5 billion being paid to publishing rights holders and, you know, songwriters. It's, once again, a little bit disingenuous, and I feel like I don't like it, and I want to let you know that's not necessarily what that means, okay? Moving forward. New music millionaires. Now, this is pretty interesting. Nearly 1,500 artists generated over $1 million in royalties from Spotify. This is super awesome. This is great. I love that. I would love for the number to be over 1,500, because we know this is such a small percentage of the number of people on Spotify. The other thing that I want to notate here, this specific little infographic here does not specify if these artists are independent or not. So I bear the question to you, what is the likelihood that these artists are actually seeing these millions of dollars and that they're not going to the labels that these artists are underneath? Because that's the likelihood. The likelihood of these artists being signed and being the ones who are getting traction because they have resources behind them is very high. So again, trying to make this claim that these millions of dollars are going directly to these musicians, we don't know that, okay? So I'm just going to keep pointing out every disingenuous thing that I see in this fucking report until we get all the way through it. So one of the other things that they say on here that they're trying to zhuzh you up is more than 80% of these millionaires from Spotify royalties did not have a song reach the Spotify Global Daily Top 50 chart, meaning that they didn't get that specific editorial playlisting, but I'm sure that there was other editorial playlisting involved in their success, you know what I'm saying? But they're just trying to tell you, like, they're trying to give you hope in this report. And I'm here to tell you, Spotify is not going to actually give it to you, okay? There's a lot more that goes into you being able to make money and do something. And to be honest with you, like, Spotify is not your savior, okay? Anyways, moving forward. We have, we're not going to talk as much about this. This has a lot to do with the fact that there are more languages of music being listened to. A lot of artists have audiences from all over the place. So just talking about kind of the globalization of music and the fact that other markets are important for musicians to venture into. I think this is an important one. $5 billion of this $10 billion, they're saying specifically has gone to independent music. So within all of these different stats, when we were talking about those $1,500 millionaires from Spotify and all of these different things, We're not seeing exactly how all of these numbers are split up, but some of those people, I guarantee you, are independent. And of course, over the past couple of years, we've been continuing to see a large rise of the independent sector and the independent market and just what it is, the potential that it has. You know what I'm saying? Why do I think this is cool and this is important? Because the majority of the people who are really reaping the benefits of their royalties and being able to see the majority of it are independent musicians who have cracked the code in some way. Meaning they found what their branding is and they're putting adequate amount of like ad spend into what they have going on. An adequate amount of marketing planning going into what they have going on and a real rollouts and budgets for those things. Once you kind of get to that place as an independent musician, you can really make money with this. And I think that it's interesting, and I want to notate that I think the people who are seeing the most, once again, out of the these royalties and these flashy numbers that Spotify is giving to you are the independent musicians who've made it. I really and truly don't think that a lot of the signed artists who are a part of these statistics are seeing the majority of their money unless, they have great deals or they recouped their situations. This is another interesting thing that they want you to look at and is another, once again, kind of like hope for you, right? So 1 in every million streams, right? If you happen to be an artist who gets 1 in every million streams on Spotify, they're saying that you could get up to $10,000 a year in royalties. Now, once again, this is kind of a hard thing to explain. Once again, if you I don't know how else to say it other than that, than there's a million streams. If you are one of them, they're saying that statistically you can make $10,000 a year with your royalties because of probability. Once again, $10,000 is not enough. $10,000 a year is not enough to live off of. And I'm just going through this. I was just I'm over these 1 in a million, 1 in 1,000, all the because these numbers are so grand and there's so many more musicians out there who not only deserve to, live off of their music, but they deserve an easier pathway to get there. Not necessarily easier, but a clearer pathway to get there. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Moving forward, it has just all of these, lovely infographics for you. And it talks more about the payouts and specifically here gives you all of these different numbers that you can talk about. These I thought were interesting as well to look at, right? So the number of recording artists who've catalogs, this I honestly think is the most telling part about all of these numbers. Number of recording artists whose catalogs generated recording and publishing royalties over $1,000 on Spotify alone. 200,000, Jesus Christ, 274,000, boom, And obviously all of these have grown over the year. So a little bit over 250,000 artists are making over $1,000 on Spotify. Once again, when we talk about the sheer number, because that amount of music is released in 2 days on Spotify, 250,000, right? These aren't impressive statistics. Spotify is really trying to pass these off as impressive statistics while the entire world is looking at them fuck you in terms of songwriters and creators. And they're just continuing to put this information out. And these numbers, so we're going on to the next one. So now $10,000. How many musicians make over $10,000 a year on Spotify alone? We're just going to continue to dwindle down a number, 71,000. And that's just going to keep going down the larger that these numbers get. I don't really care to go through them because it's the same concept over and over again. But this is interesting to me because data is really important, right? And we need data to understand our markets, to understand in many different ways. That could mean your audience, that could mean just the market that you're in. And it helps us, right? It helps us make decisions. But data can also be misleading. It can be used in misleading ways. It can be framed in misleading ways. And I think it's just important to have like discernment with these kind of things and read a little bit in between the lines, because if you were to initially look at this report, you would see a lot of these numbers and you would think, oh, like Spotify is doing so much for the music industry. They're paying all this money into the music industry, into musicians, into artists, so on and so forth. But we know at the end of the day that that's not necessarily true, and that these numbers are for so few musicians in this huge sea of music, right, that we've been dealing with over the past couple of years since streaming's inception, right? So just have discernment. Don't be stupid. You know what I'm saying? Read between the lines, like I said. Moving forward, we just have two more stories to talk about. The next one that I want to talk to you about actually really has to do with the UK's copyright law and something that they're going through when it comes to AI. So they have this proposal that I'm gonna scroll down to so I can explain it properly. But basically, it says that the consultation, which closed on February 25th, centers on plans to introduce a text and mining data exemption that would allow AI companies to use copyrighted materials for training purposes without permission unless creators specifically opt out. This sounds very confusing to me because what do you mean opt out? What do you mean I have to opt out? I would assume that this is going to like be going through what, ever the UK's version of the copyright board is, and that you would opt out within that process. But this proposal just seems like it would take a lot of brain power and manpower to like make it make sense and make it work. And there's been backlash from it because people are basically saying, what do you mean I have to opt out? Like, and also because you have to opt out of like every single work that you have. You can't just say like, I don't want to be a part of this. You have to opt out on every single piece of work that you have that you don't want it to be used in training for AI. And people are very upset about this. And it came out because people were upset about this and the outrage that spurred from it. They were like, y'all are doing this and we have 75,000 AI generated deepfakes that we are bringing to you guys, that we're trying to have you guys like figured out. And instead of figuring that out, you're telling us that you're like coming up with this way to essentially give us less protections when it comes to AI. And that is pretty crazy. And I just think that it's pretty interesting and something that I wanted to talk about today, because 75,000 AI generated songs, and mind you, this is, these 75,000 songs are infringing upon Sony's intellectual property specifically. So there's so many more than that out. And I honestly think that I've been listening to some of it. Like I'd be hearing these songs from, I've been hearing J. Cole and Kendrick a lot. Like these random songs that I've never heard before. And I'm like, this is fucking AI. Like, and it'll come up in a random playlist. This is prevalent, this is out there, and we're seeing that different countries are trying to find different ways to combat it. But we need something else. We need different systems. I'm not the one to tell you what systems they're going to be and how to do it. But I'm just here to give you the news. I'm just here to give you the information. The last thing that we're going to talk about today has to do with consumer habits, specifically the consumer habits of Gen Z. Now, this is something that I want to talk about because I think that it's I don't want this. I think it's important for anyone who is either a musician or on a musician's team or just marketing in general, because this is the audience that you are either marketing to now or are going to market to in the future, because this is the workforce that is coming into the US, right? Or that is growing within the US, right? So 67% of Gen Z identify themselves as super fans. So this is important because they specifically identify this way because they have a longing to feel close to the artists that they work with. So that's why we've been seeing, well, let me say, in my opinion, that's why we've been seeing so much like lifestyle content and just the importance of influencers and musicians almost becoming influencers and letting their audience rather enter their lives a lot more to create a deeper parasocial relationship than we even have had before. So, and I think this is interesting because I just think that that's interesting. Like, clearly, I think that humans, especially young people, are looking for connection in any way that we can get it because, like, we're starved of it. For some reason, I think that's a larger conversation. And we're turning to entertainment as a way to kind of fill that void, and doing that by, once again, just forming these parasocial relationships with the people that we're fans of, and kind of filling this void of connection. You know what I'm saying? It's very, very interesting and important for, once again, people who are selling anything in this world to understand that, because you need to make that connection in order to complete your job. You know what I'm saying? So if we know that this generation is dealing with this and is responding to it by seeking out these deep connections, we as sellers need to provide those connections for them. And how can we do that? Via different media and content and things like that, but also experiential things like shows and meet and greets and things like that. How can we bring our audience close to the brands that we're working with in a way that feels authentic and truly connects to them and touches them in a deep and meaningful way, right? Because that's what they want. With that being said, you guys, that is my final thing. I think that's a great piece to kind of go off of, a little bit of marketing 101, you know what I'm saying, with your girl Ari, also known as Nadia Sabe. But with that being said, that was today's episode. Please tune in next week or the following week for the next episode that we have out for you. Make sure also to tune into Hot 407 on iHeartRadio on March 28th to tune in to our radio show. We're going to have Phenom on. He was the submission highlight for February, so we're going to hear some stuff about his latest release, which was an EP. What else do I got for you? The jam session is coming up. That'll be coming up this coming weekend, actually the 23rd. So if you're a musician in the city, or if you're, in Florida and looking for something to do, come down to Inner Space Orlando and come jam out with us. Speaking of Inner Space, wow, that was crazy. Speaking of Inner Space Orlando, shout out to them because they host us here for this lovely podcast and make sure that I look pretty and sound good and all of that good stuff. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I've been rambling too much. Have a good day, you guys. I'll see you soon.